and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Before we get started, let's get a glimpse of today's highlights. The UN Security Council stepped up sanctions against North Korea, imposing a ban on the regime's textile exports and a supply cap on crude oil following Pyongyang's latest nuclear test. Hopes are running high that the upcoming 10-day Chuseok holiday period will lead to surging consumption, but some argue that domestic spending may not see much of a boost, with many Koreans heading abroad for the long holiday. We'll sit down with an expert to talk about this. The UN Security Council has passed a new sanctions resolution on North Korea to punish the regime for its latest and most powerful nuclear test to date. The U.S. drafted proposal earned backing from everyone on the Council, although the measures are much softer than Washington had initially hoped for. Our EJ1 starts us off.
All 15 members of the UN Security Council spoke with one voice on Monday, signing off on a new, tougher package of sanctions on North Korea. Resolution 2375 authorizes an annual sales cap of 2 million barrels a year of refined petroleum products to North Korea, a move expected to sever 55% of the regime's supply. It also freezes the amount of crude oil Pyongyang can import at 4 million barrels a year. No more joint ventures with North Korea will be allowed, and existing projects will be wound down within 120 days. All textile exports will be stopped, and countries will be prohibited from authorizing new work permits for North Korean workers, sealing off a major source of hard currency for the regime. However, there's no complete ban on oil imports and no freeze on the international assets held by leader Kim Jong-un and other senior figures within the leadership. The Trump administration had those in the initial stage of the draft resolution, but had to water it down to appease the regime's closest allies, China and Russia. Still, it is the toughest UN resolution to date, and the international community is hoping to see results this time, unlike previous resolutions that failed to rein in the North's nuclear and missile programs.
Today, the Security Council has acted in a different way. We are done trying to prod the regime to do the right thing. We are now acting to stop it from having the ability to continue doing the wrong thing.
Sending a strong message just 9 days after the regime conducted its most powerful nuclear test to date, the U.S. ambassador to the UN said the steps would only work if all nations implement them completely and aggressively. However, questions remain as to whether this latest resolution, already the 9th of its kind on the regime, will be enough to force North Korea back to table for talks, the objective of the resolution in the first place. Lee Ji-won, Business Daily.
Meanwhile, U.S. lawmakers could raise its maximum pressure on Pyongyang by punishing Chinese banks funneling money to North Korea. The House Foreign Affairs Committee will hold a hearing later on Tuesday to consider these sanctions. Committee Chairman Ed Royce has been pushing for legislation that cuts off North Korea's hard currency flow used to fund its weapons program. In a letter to the White House last week, the committee listed Chinese banks with suspected financial ties to the regime, including the Agricultural Bank of China and China Merchants Bank. While understanding the possible knock-on effects for the U.S. and global economies at large, the congressman said the measures are necessary to prevent a nuclear-armed North Korea. The Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy is considering the possible outcomes of Korea's complaint to the WTO over China's THAAD retaliation. Seoul's government has been accused of being slow and passive in its response, despite China's potential violation of its free trade agreement with Korea. Trade Minister Baek Eun-kyu says the government could file a lawsuit to the WTO regarding the dispute, while continuing to support local firms that are facing retaliation from China. Baek also added that without a political and diplomatic resolution to the crisis, the economy could continue to suffer. New data from the OECD shows labor force participation among young Koreans ranking near the bottom among developed nations, while that of the elderly is near the top. Labor participation rate among young Koreans aged 25 to 29 was seen at 76% last year, coming in at 31st among the 35 member nations. For those aged 65 and older, the figure was at 31.5%, second among the OECD and more than double its average. Now, watchers say the low labor participation among young Koreans is due to the lackluster job market amid tough economic conditions. Korea's Thanksgiving holiday Chuseok is quickly approaching, but surging food prices is becoming a worry among consumers. In fact, the country's inflation in food prices turns out to be over 3 times higher than the OECD average. Our Lee Ju-young has more.
Korea's inflation in grocery costs is on an upward trend with no sign of a slowdown anytime soon. For one, the OECD says the cost of Korea's food and non-alcoholic beverages grew roughly 5.6% on year in July, the 5th largest increase in the OECD after Turkey, Mexico, Latvia, and the Czech Republic. Heavy rain and the summer heat wave have further pushed up food prices, with overall consumer prices growing at the fastest pace in more than 5 years during the month of August. With the Thanksgiving Chuseok holiday set to roll around in less than a month's time, concerns are mounting over the price of food. According to Korea Agro-Fisheries and Food Trade Corporation, the price of a head of Napa cabbage as of last week was nearly $6, up roughly 76% from a year ago. Along with other key ingredients like white radish and green onions, the price of popular cuts of meat like pork belly and native-bred Hanu sirloin have also climbed up as well, surging 18% and 16% respectively. The price of a tray of 30 eggs, on the other hand, plunged about 24% from a month ago on the back of falling demand after the scare over pesticide-contaminated eggs in early August. Amid rising consumer prices, the government is soon expected to announce countermeasures to stabilize the market. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
With the designation of October 2nd as a temporary holiday, many Koreans will be enjoying a 10-day break starting on the last day of September. So how effective will this long holiday be in boosting domestic demand? Let's find out.
The Moon Jae-in government has designated October 2nd as a temporary holiday to bridge the weekend starting on September 30th with the Korean Thanksgiving Chuseok holiday, National Foundation Day, and Hangul Day, which falls on Monday, October 9th. That means Koreans will be enjoying an extended vacation period stretching for 10 days without interruption. The Moon government hopes the long holiday will help boost domestic consumption and allow Koreans to recharge and spend more time with their families and friends. Back in 2015, August 14th was designated as an alternate holiday to make up for Independence Day on August 15th, which fell on a Saturday that year. And last year, May 6th was assigned a red letter on a temporary basis, letting people take 4 days off in a row, with the country celebrating Children's Day on May 5th. According to the Finance Ministry, during the temporary holiday period in May 2016, department store sales rose 16%, while spending at duty-free shops soared 19.2%. However, there are concerns that the time off could be detrimental to industrial output and exports, two of Korea's main growth engines. A recent report by Citibank Korea said Korea's export growth is likely to slow to single digits in the fourth quarter due to the base effect and less working days from the long Chuseok holiday.
And to tell us more about this, Professor Yang Jun Soo from the Catholic University of Korea joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Happy to be here.
All right, so during his campaign, President Moon said getting some good rest during the holidays will weigh in on national competency. So I guess we can assume that the designation of October 2nd as a temporary holiday was partly due to this reason.
Well, partly, but also this has been part of a long-running concern in Korea, not only with this president, but also previous presidents. We have, according to the OECD, we have one of the lowest labor productivity, but the largest, highest number of working hours. So people are tired and they apparently are not doing their work very well. That shows up in low job satisfaction. So we have been trying for more than 10 years to try to get people to take a break. So we came up with replacement holidays in case some of the holidays fall on the weekend. And because of that, there's more cases now where you have just one day sandwiched, one working day sandwiched between holidays. So I think this is one of the solutions to take advantage of that.
All right. So with the holiday period now extended to 10 days without interruption, including two weekends, there are high hopes that this could boost domestic demand. Now, how effective do you think it will be in revitalizing the domestic market?
Okay, well, this isn't the first time that we had these temporary holidays. And there has been some estimates that were made in previous cases where we had temporary holidays, but there hasn't been really a formal study on it. The Institute of Culture and Tourism, that's a government think tank, they released a report saying that this will add maybe about 43 billion won to GDP, but they're only considering the tourism industry.
Okay.
Last year, Hyundai Economic Research Institute said that it may add about 2 trillion won to the economy. That may have been a bit overblown. We haven't gone over and checked the numbers because, well, it's part of the holiday spending, so we don't know whether it just came from that one day or the entire holiday. But the Ministry of Planning and Finance did confirm that there was a lot of increase in things like museum attendance and transportation services during the temporary holiday, so there's probably going to be some effect. And that's always good because, well, we want to raise consumption right now.
Right. But industry officials are saying that more Koreans will actually head overseas and spend more money abroad rather than staying here and spending money domestically. And also there are who are saying that big department stores and outlet stores will be the only ones to benefit. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, well, my thought is that consumption is consumption. Macroeconomics wise, when you add it into the GDP, you don't particularly figure which areas that consumption came in. But going beyond that, partially things like, say, foreign trips, part of that money will go to domestic companies, tourism companies, airplanes, and so on. And then I think what we really have to consider is that, well, why are some areas getting most of the benefits and some areas not? Why are people going to department stores instead of traditional stores? And I think we need to improve the competitiveness of the traditional market against the department stores, to give an example. And they're not going to do that if they don't have opportunities like this.
Right.
So they should think of this as a chance to really give themselves a boost and trying to think of how can we take advantage of this.
Now, the critics are also concerned about its negative side effects on industrial output and exports, as well as its effect on overall GDP.
Okay, well, the problem with these temporary holidays is that they're decided very late. And there has been a lot of complaint by Korean producers saying that Korea, compared to OECD standards, have too many holidays. Now, that is true, just in terms of number of holidays, but in terms of people who are actually taking advantage of those holidays, the question becomes more ambiguous because a lot of people have to go to work even during those holidays because their company either demands it or the workers themselves sort of expect to go to work because they're too scared that perhaps they will lose their jobs if they take too many breaks, even if it is a legal holiday.
Right.
So I think the best solution for this is to have some kind of an expectation. You're expected to have a certain number of days off. Whenever you have these type of temporary holiday type of situations, the company should know about it far ahead so that they can plan for it. Right now, we just made the decision to have this temporary holiday a week ago.
Right.
And that's actually only for government workers because that's the only people that government can force this temporary holiday on. So a lot of private companies, including my school, haven't made the decision on whether they're going to have a break yet. So a lot of my students are actually in a limbo. They're wondering whether they can go before on the first weekend or they have to wait until Tuesday of that week.
Okay. All right. Well, now, like we mentioned, there are calls for the government to designate these temporary holidays early on instead of just announcing them a week or a month before the actual date. So what are some of the means that the government should consider in order to maximize the economic windfall of temporary and long holidays?
Okay, I think the way that the United States does it is a good compromise.
Okay.
I think they only have 3 holidays where they rest on specific date. The Independence Day, the New Year's Day, and Christmas. All other holidays, they put it either on Monday or on Friday and Thursday. So what that allows them to do is almost every holiday becomes a long weekend. So they can plan to, let's say, go on a trip or take a restful trip, restful 3 days somewhere. Now, when you have a temporary holiday, which is decided very late, as I mentioned before, people cannot make those type of plans. Companies cannot adjust, so that incurs extra costs, and you also lose a lot of consumption effect. So the United States way is put it on the week, put it on Fridays or Mondays, and then have no temporary holidays so everybody knows what to expect. Korea, I do not expect it to go as well because we have too many holidays which are date specific.
Right.
And I think culturally, a lot of people will not accept moving these dates to Mondays or Fridays. Then I think the best second solution is to decide on this on January of the previous year.
Okay.
So if you have possibility of temporary holidays in say 2019, then decide that on January of 2018. Companies print their calendars, make their plans about a year ahead. So when they print their calendars in, say, summer of 2018, they'll know exactly what days are going to be taken off on 2019.
Sounds like a very good idea. Let's hope that the government considers many means in regards to temporary holidays. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
A battle in the premium smartphone market is looming ahead of the release of Samsung's Galaxy Note 8 later this week. The Korean tech giant held a media event earlier today to officially introduce its newest device to the Korea's public. Our Park Hee-jun takes us there.
Samsung Electronics hosted its Galaxy Note 8 Media Day event on Tuesday in Seoul, the same event that was held last month in New York City to promote its latest model of the Galaxy Note series. Many thought it would never happen after Samsung's disastrous recall of its previous Galaxy Note 7 model, but the series has made a comeback with some impressive features.
Despite the unfortunate event, we continue to experiment with new features for our loyal customers. Through this process, I believe the Galaxy Note 8 has been reborn as the greatest of the Note series.
One of the greatest strengths of Samsung smartphones has been the S Pen. Now, users can express themselves in a much more creative way than before, one being live messaging. With the pen, they can draw their own animated messages on a canvas and share it through text messages, emails, and social media. New features unique to the Galaxy Note 8 include app pairing that allows simultaneous use of 2 applications, and a dual camera allowing users to take wide-angle and zoom-in pictures with a single shot. The Galaxy Note 8 has garnered a lot of media attention in recent weeks, but it's not purely about the device itself. There's also Samsung's big rivalry with Apple to consider, as the US firm prepares to unveil its 10th anniversary iPhone, the aptly titled iPhone X. The newest iPhone is set to be released on Tuesday local time in the US, just 3 days before the release of the Galaxy Note 8. According to leaked information, the iPhone X includes a 5.8-inch OLED display, wireless battery charging, and a 3D face scanner that unlocks users' smartphones in a few hundred milliseconds. Anticipation is building among Apple fans, despite the handset's retail price being set above $1,000. Nevertheless, Samsung is confident that it will maintain its dominant share in the premium smartphone market, saying the Note 8 is devoted to technology that actually matters to the daily lives of its consumers. Park Hee-jun, Business Daily.
China is now Brazil's biggest foreign investor, surpassing the U.S. for 3 years in a row. According to Brazilian media, citing data from consulting firms, China invested more than $19 billion in Brazil in 2015, accounting for 1/3 of the country's total foreign investment. Last year, China invested $7 billion, 80% more than the U.S. The investments mostly came in the form of mergers and acquisitions, especially in the energy, infrastructure, and agricultural sectors. It's been 80 years since ethnic Koreans were deported from the Far East by the former Soviet Union under Stalin's policy of forced migration. Many of them have settled down in various parts of Central Asia, and our Kim Hae-sung met two of them in Almaty, who are hoping to serve as bridges connecting Korea and Kazakhstan.
Bronislav Shin is busy working as chairman of Almaty Inzistory, one of the top 50 companies in Kazakhstan. Medals and awards are testament to his success as he built major roads and buildings across the country. But it was not an easy path for Shin.
I was born and raised in Arirang, a rural part of the country, when my parents were forced to relocate there under Stalin. My siblings and I didn't even have shoes to wear back then. We were poor.
It was only after the collapse of the Soviet Union that he had the opportunity to work as a construction worker, then senior manager, and finally chairman. Around 170,000 Korean or ethnic Koreans were deported from the Russian Far East under Stalin in 1937, and many of them died due to starvation and cold weather. As of 2017, around 100,000 Koreans live in Kazakhstan and are considered one of the most successful and respected ethnic minorities out of the 130 in the country. With diligence and persistence, not only have many Kazakh Koreans become successful in business, they're also using their skills to get involved in academia, culture, and even politics here in Kazakhstan. Roman Kim is the deputy of the Mazhili's lower house of the Kazakhstani parliament.
My dad passed away when I was 10. My mom raised me and always told me to study hard. The Korean Association of Kazakhstan encouraged me to move to Astana and work for the public service. And now, I'm serving as the president of the association. We provide Korean language programs and hold various business networking forums.
Both Shin and Kim say they are grateful to Kazakhstan for helping them adapt to society, but they also long for their roots, which prompted Shin to found an organization to preserve Korean culture and heritage in Kazakhstan.
Unfortunately, due to Stalin's nationalities policy, I can only speak Russian. I was forced to forget my identity as a Korean, but I hope the current and future generations can know the true Korea and work as cultural bridges between Korea and Kazakhstan. My grandson is now in a Korean university. He can speak Korean.
Born as Koreans, die as Koreans. I'm a Kazakh, but still, I'm proud of my Korean heritage.
Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily, Almaty.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. And just a little thing to know for our viewers, I'll be gone starting tomorrow, Wednesday, and throughout next week to take part in a journalist training program. So while I'm gone, our Arirang News reporter and anchor Ji Myung-gil will be filling in for me. So don't forget to tune in at the same time, same place tomorrow for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.